Sidekicks, the weekly cybersecurity podcast hosted by Richmond Advisory Group's principal analysts, namely me, Christina Richmond.
And me, Rory Duncan. This podcast is your go-to partner for understanding the cybersecurity market, industry trends, and the real-world challenges of protecting organizations today. Hello, Christina.
Hello, Rory. How is the UK today?
It is kind of wet and rainy. We're preparing to receive Storm Amy, the first named storm of the season. That'll be this weekend, so Friday through Saturday. Apparently it did originate somewhere off the Azores, spun its way across the Atlantic towards the US, decided to change its mind, and spun itself back over the Atlantic towards us. So, joy.
Oh dear. I hope Amy is gentle on you and it's not a bad storm.
Yes, thank you. Well, you know, I think we'll be okay here on the East Coast, because I'm on the East Coast, folks, in Edinburgh. If you didn't already know, the West Coast tends to get everything coming in from the Atlantic, so it'll get the first rain and the wind and so on, where we used to live up in the kind of northwest of Scotland. Anyway, so we have a packed show this week, Christina.
Oh, good. Yeah, what's going on? Tell me what we're talking about this week.
Well, the first thing we need to talk about is there's a new term, a new AI-related term that's been coined, and it's called work slop. That's work slop.
And my.
This is a team of researchers coined a new term, and this has been reported in the Harvard Business Review, that work slop is AI-generated work content that masquerades as good work, but lacks the substance to meaningfully advance a given task. Right? So the insidious effect of work slop is that it shifts the burden of the work downstream, requiring the receiver to interpret, correct, or redo the work. In other words, and this is the really important thing, it transfers the effort from the creator to the receiver. Now, the whole point about a lot of this AI enhanced productivity applications and so on is the fact that, it will help you parse your email, it will create lists for you and reports and so on that you can send on. Great, that saved me time. On the other end, as a receiver, you're starting to get a lot more documents, bigger documents, things that you have to parse. So really, one area is becoming more productive as the other area becomes less potentially. You know, that's
Isn't this like, shouldn't it be called Teflon? We used to call leaders who would just let the work kind of go downstream. They'd slide it off their plate to others. You know, it's the merd goes downstream, shall we say, approach. So,
yes, that's right.
So maybe this is Teflon or work slop. And didn't we have another slop word sometime in our podcast? What was that?
It was this slop squatting.
Oh, slop squatting. That's right. That's right. Yeah, and so slop squatting. I guess AI is bringing. You know how every new technology will bring its own little universe of words, acronyms, things like that. So slop being applied in AI instances is interesting. So slop squatting is where coding agents hallucinate non-existent but plausible package names that malicious actors then use to deliver malware, right? So now we have the Teflon slop, the work slop, and we have the hallucinated packages slop squatting. All right, I'm off my little, whatever. Back to the programming.
I don't think it's the last slop-related word we're going to hear. But
I agree.
There we go. We shall keep the listeners informed and make sure that you get to know the very latest in this particular area, everybody. So what else have we got this week? Well, a little bit more M&A news. Cyberbit has acquired a Range Force, which is an interesting one.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing about that one. I didn't really research that one, so that'll be on you. It's also Cybersecurity Awareness Month, October 2025. What's the theme, Rory?
Wow. The theme this year is Build a Cyber Strong America. So all the basic hygiene plus leveling up, logging, backup, encryption, .gov website, sharing cyber incident info, etc. So
etc.,
some things that
etc.
are not new, but for those of you regular listeners who've been tuning in to Cyber Sidekicks for the last 6 months or so, you will hear the topic of identity has come up many, 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 many times. In fact, almost on every single episode that
Yeah.
we've done.
Speaking of which, we're chatting with Rosario, not on this
Ah,
podcast, but we're
mm-hmm.
chatting with him later today and having a little catch up with him about non-human identities. So,
It's a
and
very good
then
name.
we have a delightful guest today, not on identity necessarily, although it certainly could be impacted by identity issues. Right, Danny Howett
Mm-hmm.
at CyXcel's. He's the technical director. I wonder if technical director is like the CTO. I wonder if
Hmm.
that's the same.
We'll need to
But
ask
anyway,
him.
we'll be talking. Yeah, we'll be talking about incident response and forensics and DFIR overall. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. So that's what we've got coming up, folks. Let's talk a little bit about the stories of the week or the last few weeks, Christina. The first
Yeah.
one,
Let's do.
the first one I have is a little bit of M&A news. So this was a couple of weeks ago, just at the tail end of September. September was also quite a busy month on the M&A front, and this was the news that Cyberbit has acquired Rangeforce to create a combined cyber range platform. Cyberbit said that they are effectively, this move is uniting two leading cyber range platforms so they can both beef up and provide this hyper realistic attack simulation, SOC team assessment and capability building, as well as provide solo upskilling experiences. Now, they are based in the US, but they do talk about the fact that this is something that would be helpful for the budget conscious SOC teams, but puts the emphasis on the team, the humans behind it, which I thought that was really good. The fact that we always talked about the human aspect of security and having the human in the loop. And they've joined together to provide this sort of much bigger, much more dynamic organization that, again, doubles down on the importance of the SOC teams and the individuals and the working together and so on. So I thought that was really interesting.
This is actually perfect for the discussion we have coming up with Danny at CyXcel's because he does DFIR,
Mm-hmm.
and CyXcel's also does incident readiness. And so, looking at Rangeforce, their website, they are helping build skills,
Mm-hmm.
exercising the capabilities, working on readiness, teaching how to do threat hunting together, how to improve, alert handling and triage and whatnot. I'm not as aware of Cyberbit, and
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't actually heard about them. So I wonder if they're both kind of small, and I don't
Yeah.
know much about them. Do you
Well,
know?
so they're both quite small companies. They operate in the same sphere, but they seem to do slightly different things. So Rangeforce, it appears that they look at solo and team exercises, skills gap analysis, and then foundational blue and red team content. So a lot of
Yeah.
it's on that. Whereas then
Hmm.
Cyberbit takes it, they describe it as taking it kind of one step further, or readiness further. So enablement of SOC teams and advanced operators to investigate incidents with real commercial tools in environments that mirror their daily work. So one, I think, looks at the pure skills and the approaches and the kind of best practices, and then the other part now, both together, tends to do the actual, this is how it works in the real world with real tools and applications that you'll be using each day. So I thought that was interesting.
I think it seems like a handy marriage, right? Of
Mm-hmm,
the
mm-hmm.
solo and team exercising skills gap, blue and red team, and then going to the SOC enablement, incident readiness side with Cyberbit. It seems like it would be a good blend.
Christina, what
Yeah.
month is it? The month of October is...
Well, we have Halloween.
Oh,
It's fall. We have a lot
yes.
of leaf peeping,
Yes,
looking
yes,
at
yes,
the.
yes, yes.
Oh, you mean Cyber Awareness Month.
Yes, Cybersecurity Awareness Month 2025. So what?
Now, is that a global thing? Is that a global thing? Before I say what the theme is, because you're going to ask me, but is that a global thing, Cyber Awareness Month?
I mean, possibly. It is the 22nd time there has been a Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And they say it's an initiative launched under the guidance of the US Department of Homeland Security. So it's probably US Cybersecurity Awareness Month, I would imagine.
Yeah, well, and the theme, dun, 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 is build a cyber strong America. To heck with all the other countries. We're just going to build.
Yay.
Sorry, I had to say it.
Well,
I mean, come on now. Let's build a cyber strong America. So, CISA and the DHS are focused on government entities, small and medium sized businesses, critical
yeah.
infrastructure. So, yeah, okay, fine. But I remember in past, it has been maybe directed by or launched by or suggested by CISA, but it was joined in by many other countries. And so, I must say I'm disappointed
Well,
once again.
I know. Well, I
Yeah.
think there are probably some things that just can't be talked about. We know that there's strong international cooperation with the Five Eyes.
True.
And presumably a lot of the learnings from that will be going on in the background. And I imagine in parallel, the various organizations on this side of the Atlantic, cybersecurity very much moved out of being considered an IT concern and moved into a national security concern, which I think allows it to have much more focus and exposure. So that's good. So I'm sure it's all going on in the background in other countries, not just the US. But I think it's a good way to highlight some of the challenges, particularly as identity, as this report says, identity remains the most exploited attack vector, and definitely that's reflected in everything that we've talked about.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's good to have awareness, to have the focus, right?
Yeah.
Doing a little bit of research, we have an acting director of CISA, Madhu Gotumukala, and he comes from South Dakota. He moved from India back in 2019. It makes sense that Governor Kristi Noem was governor of South Dakota and is now the DHS head in the Trump administration, and so perhaps she brought him over.
Yeah.
I would imagine that is what happened, and that is how things do happen quite often in politics. So he seems quite sharp. I did some research on him. There are some great recommendations for him. Yeah, so we'll see how CISA does under his leadership. I look forward to hearing more about him. I think that the really important thing here, and we mentioned it in the intro, is that this is really just going back to the basics, folks. Strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, but then also leveling up if you're critical infrastructure in government, look at making sure you have logging, that you have backup, you're using encryption, maybe get a .gov website if you can, and then also share your cyber incident information.
So this week's special guest is Danny Howett, a technical director at CyXcel's. Welcome, Danny. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Rory. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. So, Danny, I know we have not talked with you guys at CyXcel's before, so maybe you could just introduce yourself, say a few words about what you do and some of the topics that you're most interested in talking about today.
Yeah, sure. So, by way of introduction, I am Danny Howett, so technical director at CyXcel's. So day-to-day, helping organisations that have suffered cybersecurity incidents through investigation as to what's occurred. I also head up our Trace, our threat intelligence team. My background is in covert dark web investigations, as well as digital forensic and incident response.
And you were a police officer, Danny. I see that now. I'm just looking at your LinkedIn. So you were in Bedfordshire. Is that correct?
That's right. So I was a detective for Bedfordshire Police for 13 years, working primarily in CID, so dealing with serious and complex crime. And then the last 5 or 6 years of my policing career working for the cybercrime unit, so supporting investigations that required analysis of digital devices, so computers,
Right.
mobile phones, to support a range of investigations from CSE matters to complex international crimes. Very, very interesting.
Yeah. No, a lot of folks come out of law enforcement and move into cyber. In fact, my nephew has recently changed careers from being a police officer here in the States to going into cyber. So it's one of the paths, absolutely. What I found interesting in looking at CyXcel was how it blends the legal services with the incident readiness and response. And so one of the things I'd love to chat about is that aspect, for our listeners. First of all, your hair on fire when you're in the middle of an incident, and maybe you have your legal team on site, maybe you don't. Maybe you have insurance and maybe you don't. But it's a really interesting thing to develop a firm, and I think CyXcel's pretty new, a couple of years old from what I've read. Tell me just a little bit, please, if you would, just tell us a little bit about that intersection and educate our listeners about why it's interesting to have legal services attached to the incident readiness and response capabilities that CyXcel has.
Yeah, and I think CyXcel was born out of that idea of fusing together the incident response side with the legal and regulatory side that always comes with a cyber incident, whether it's legal counsel advising on how to manage an incident, dealing with the regulatory side of things, and actually, one of CyXcel's taglines is you're only calling it in a crisis. So when an incident does occur, particularly for uninsured organisations, they might not have the battle box ready to go. And what you don't want to be doing when you've got a significant cyber attack is ringing up and finding an instant response provider, ringing up and finding legal counsel. So the whole idea is that we bring all of that under one roof. So we've got the proactive side of things that help prevent cyber attacks and help businesses better plan for any potential attack. And then we've got the instant response side that can help if an attack does occur, all masked by our legal service. And that's quite a unique service offering. We offer something called GLS, which is a global legal service. So what we can do is offer legal advice across a range of countries.
Mm-hmm. So Danny, you mentioned it there, the I word, insurance. Given some of the more high-profile attacks that have happened recently in the UK, the incidents presumably through ransomware or whatever, there is a poor old Jaguar Land Rover who apparently were in the middle of negotiating cyber insurance when their particular attack happened. Is it common for companies, you find these days, not to have robust cyber insurance in place? I would have thought that some of the largest companies like Jaguar Land Rover, the largest car maker in the UK, would or should have something like that in place.
I think in terms of the organisations that I've supported, and it's hundreds over the past few years, probably 20-30% of those haven't had cyber insurance in place for a variety of reasons. That might be they just haven't got around to it, which looks like the JLR situation of they had cyber insurance but they never renewed it, or they were looking for a new vendor. It might be because of M&A. So you've got where companies have been bought, they might not have adequate protections in place. But what has been highlighted is that a significant cyber attack is a significant cost to a business, and we can see that from the losses at M&S, at the Co-op, and the Jaguar Land Rover situation, where they're not only the employers, but their employees and a large percentage of their supply chain have been disrupted to the extent that the government are now providing a significant loan to keep that supply chain going.
Yeah, and Christina, just for your information, that was a £1.5 billion long-term loan. I think it's interest-free, but that's quite significant.
That is very significant.
Yeah, and it kind of reflects the fact that the supply chain is so huge. I think it's something like over 200,000 people are involved somewhere, either building components or supplying parts to JLR.
I'm curious, what should folks do then? Having studied incident readiness quite a bit back in the day when I was at IDC, I have my thoughts, but things have moved on since I've been there, and now we've got our own firm for the last couple of years here. Tell our listeners what they should be thinking about. Should, review what they have in terms of insurance, practice their tabletops, do some cyber range. I don't know. Tell us how they should prepare for the inevitable. It's not if and when, it's how often, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we've learned over the last few years is that organisations of all size, of all scale, and of all IT budgets can and will be attacked by a threat actor that's motivated enough to get into an organisation. What should a company do to plan for that happening? You've got to have a layered approach to your network security. You've got to have different locked doors that mean if someone does get in through the first part, actually they can't do that much. And hopefully by that point you will spot them. Segmented networks really helps. Having a robust offline backup that meets your recovery time objectives as an organization is crucial, particularly in the event of a significant attack. But also ongoing training for IT staff to understand the risk that they might be looking for against a really fast moving threat landscape where we're seeing AI being increasingly used. We're seeing the number of ransomware as a service groups increase exponentially. And what you get with that is affiliates that have their own unique set of skills. Whereas a couple of years ago, we knew that ransomware groups, for the most part, followed a playbook. This is how you get into a network. This is what you do when you're in there. With affiliates, it's much more difficult because they've got their own set of skills, and that makes detection much more difficult. So ongoing investment in your staff, ongoing investment in cybersecurity, having a robust backup plan and tested as well. So we go back to the ransomware readiness, the cyber resilience training is very much an integral part of it. These things are great on paper; they don't always work in practice.
Danny, you mentioned staff there, and I know a lot of when we talk about cyber resilience, it's often assumed purely that these are external threats. They're bad actors externally. It's not new, but certainly recently I've seen a number of investigations regarding internal threats. There was a case recently, there was a BBC journalist who'd been targeted by a ransomware firm because they thought he had a technical role, and they basically were trying to give him money to trade his login credentials. That's obviously, a threat if you have a disgruntled employee or somebody open to bribery. The second one was something similar, where companies had set up fake LinkedIn profiles and were targeting Department of Defense contractors. They would make the perfect job using an AI bot, and then try to get those in the defense industry to apply, get them to upload their CV by going to this link, and then boom, they were in their systems. So the question for you is, that's a long way to introduce it, but given your law enforcement background, how much of a threat do you think the internal threat is, or is it increasing? Do you think that that's a more challenging way of actors getting into organizations?
I think we've seen it on an ongoing basis, and we do know, and the Joe Tidy report, who's the BBC correspondent, was really interesting because it gives a deeper insight into the lengths that threat actors will go to, and so I think that was Medusa ransomware who approached him, and as you rightly say, offered a percentage of any potential ransom fee without really knowing who he was or the extent of access he may have to organisations. But I see that all the time. So I monitor the dark web every day for risks, for risks, for threats, for trends, and we see several threat actors offering either money up front or a percentage of any potential ransomware fee for IT admins who might provide access to organisation. So an initial access brokers is a big part of the as a service cyber ecosystem. Initial access brokers will commonly offer ready-made access to organisations who may already have the access and are sitting dormantly in there waiting to sell it, or they may be quite overt and publish. We've got access to this organisation on a forum, but insider risk is one of the biggest threats, because you've got ready-made access to the organization because you work there. So how do you identify suspicious behavior? And there's ways that AI can help with that, and there's ways that tools can help with that by looking at anomalous behavior. So looking at, if you always sign in 9 to 5 and then suddenly you're signing in at 10 o'clock at night, what's the reason for that? You need something that's going to alert on that. If you never go into a specific file server and suddenly you're going in there, again, you need an alert that's going to trigger at least someone having a look and say, why is that happening? It's this person's worked here for 3 years. That's never happened before. It's anomalous. Why is it happening now? And it might be legitimate, but having a look before it becomes a problem, if it's not, is key.
Right.
And I mean, the other side of insider risk is just accidents. Humans make errors. Unfortunately, we're not very good at clicking on things that we shouldn't click on. Unfortunately, and again, we've seen a huge increase in what an AI email looks like in terms of a phishing email over a handwritten email by someone whose first language might not be English. What we're looking for now in phishing emails is style and tone. Is it written like a human? Because AI is so good at crafting an email.
Yeah, but even that, right, Danny? It's difficult to parse because the impersonation has gotten so much better, and the deep fakes, in terms of not just the emails, the phishing emails, in terms of how they're crafted and what the tone is, but actually now putting a face and a voice together. And I know it's early days, but AI is both good at defending, to your point, in terms of looking for anomalous behavior, but also really good at being used in attacks. And it is an arms race. And the attackers have always been, outstepping us, if you will, right? We're always following a few paces behind. So, yeah, it continues. That job security, unfortunately, for those of us in cyber continues. But I wanted to jump in also on, this being Cyber Awareness Month, at least here in the US. Rory and I had a quick chat about that. Is it a global event? Is it something that you see going on in the UK, that there's a Cyber Awareness Month at some point, or a global effort to raise awareness on things like insider threat and bolstering your passwords, MFA, doing the basic hygiene, which is what CISA here in the US is recommending? Is this something you see globally, or at least in your patch of the world, Danny?
Yeah, so October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month here. It's a global initiative, I think, to promote cybersecurity education and awareness. So in the UK here, you've got the National Cybersecurity Centre, so the NCSC, holding events to strengthen cyber resilience across sort of a range of industries. And it's never been more front and centre in the UK, with the very high nature profile of the organisations that have been targeted this year. So yeah, it's a global thing, and education is key.
So I stand corrected, Christina, and just to say, Danny, because I was like, no, it's an American thing.
No. Well, I mean, the theme here from CISA is, build a cyber strong America.
Yeah, build a cyber strong America. And
so,
it was an initiative, by the Department of Homeland Security. So we thought, it must be just a US thing.
Well, and I said to Rory, it's been an ongoing thing for the 20 years I've been in cyber. I've been watching it globally, and people, jump in, and everybody's talking about working together. But this year, America decided to just talk about building a strong cyber America. And I'll leave it at that. I'll say no more. I'll behave. But yeah, so, we didn't ask Danny our favorite question.
Yes.
So, you go ahead, Rory, please.
Oh, fine. So, Danny, usually the first question, but that's fine. We can spring it on you now. Given the work that you do, imagine in Danny's world, your day-to-day world, what keeps you up at night? What is the top of mind?
I think the absence of evidence. So when we're investigating a cyber incident, understanding what's occurred, and particularly root cause, is essential. Understanding how something happened helps organisations in plugging security gaps, improving policies, and hopefully stopping it from happening again. But a lot of the time we see evidence not being available. And we see that in a few ways. We see that through threat actors deleting data when they're in a network. Commonly that's things like event logs or bash history being deleted. It's not ideal, it doesn't normally hinder an investigation too much. There's lots of other log and data sources they don't touch that are normally available. What we see more commonly is lack of logging. So where logs aren't retained or the retention period isn't sufficient to be able to reconstruct a timeline of what's happened. And sometimes what we see, if we're not engaged straight away to support an organisation, we do see recovery without retention. And there's this perennial battle between organisations wanting to recover as quickly as they can without fully understanding how it happened in the first place. And that's probably the most dangerous scenario. You're overwriting data from infected machines with what are hopefully clean backups without preserving the data for investigation. Organisations want to get back online quickly, but there is a real risk with that actually you're just rolling back to another infected state, and then you're going to be back to square one a little bit later.
Right, and there may be a budgetary reason for that, right? Because they don't have budget for the storage of the, logs that go back far enough, or they want to recover quickly because of, the monetary impact, but then they don't want to spend a lot of money on a service provider doing the full investigation on retained logs to then see what the provenance was of the attack. Do you see that as a budgetary thing, or is it just sometimes lack of understanding?
I think you're right. I think there's obviously some sectors that have a very low tolerance for downtime because it will affect financially
Indeed.
operations. It will affect reputation, and actually a lot of sectors. If we go again to the JLR attack, the automotive sector for the most part now operates a just-in-time model, so they don't keep inventories of stock in warehouse anymore. They order it as they need it. And what you see very quickly is if there is a problem somewhere in that supply chain, that the whole manufacturing comes to a halt. So yeah, I think there's certainly that aspect to things in terms of organisations wanting to keep the wheels moving and the money coming in. And I think that's probably the primary driver behind it. That's where it's crucial to have a plan. You'll have SLAs with providers. But you need a plan to keep the business going. And I've worked numerous cases where an organization's been hit by a ransomware attack. Things have been fixed really, really quickly without fully understanding root cause. And 6 months later, they've been hit again. And I don't have them to hand, but I can probably give you 10 organizations I've worked with that have been hit 2-3 times by ransomware. Over a period of 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
I loved what you said about the backups, though, because, folks, listen to Danny on this one. Ransomware is such a big area of attack in our current days, right? And so many big companies are being taken down by it. But if you have your data, where your data, especially your crown jewel data is, you have it off the main network for backup so that you can restore it. It's not accessible. Use encryption, right? I mean, these are things, they are expensive, but it's better to be prepared in that regard and to be able to access your data during a ransomware and to rebuild than to necessarily pay, especially, whatever, millions, if not billions of dollars in JLR's case.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're paying. If they're paying, I know nothing about what Jaguar is doing, but yeah. So I think that the ransomware piece and the backup piece was really fantastic advice.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, Danny, that's been a really great discussion. Thanks for that. Appreciate that. We are also, typically our guests recently, when you've asking them what keeps them up at night, they will talk about certain technologies. Typically, AI agents has been probably the most common one, Christina, recently. So actually, to hear the comment about lack of evidence is very interesting.
Oh,
yeah. However,
really interesting.
However, given your history in law enforcement, Danny, perhaps that's not a surprise. Being concerned about lack of evidence. So, thanks for that. Appreciate your input.
This has been a great discussion, really. I've really enjoyed it, and I would love to get us a briefing with CyXcel's if they're willing. Danny, if you don't mind maybe helping us navigate that, we would love to maybe chat again as well and have you on the podcast again. Thank you.
Thanks, Danny.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Well, that was a really interesting discussion with Danny.
It was.
Yeah, good to hear his perspective, particularly given his history in the law enforcement. That certainly gives a different perspective, something quite unique when it comes to looking at cybersecurity and, evidence-based investigations and so on. So, yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I thought that was fascinating. And of course, in DFIR, the digital forensic side of things is critical. And fascinating to hear that, evidence is not always retained in a way that we should do, right? Just so that we don't have things happen again.
Yeah, exactly. So we should probably close the show out and talk a little bit about how you can get hold of us. So please, if you'd like to leave us a message with some feedback, suggestions, if you'd prefer not to write an email, you can leave us a voicemail, 90 seconds max, and that is through SpeakPipe. So it is speakpipe.com/cyber_sidekicks, or you can send us an email.
Yeah, I'm at Christina, CHRISTINA, at richmondadvisorygroup.com, and Rory can be found, RORY is Rory, at richmondadvisorygroup.com. And so, leave us a message. If it's not too spicy, we'll share it on the show.
Yep.
And then next week.
Yes, who have we got? I was going to say, who have we got on next week, Christina?
Yeah, we've got Chaitanya Challa from IBM Guardium Data Security. And what we're going to talk about, which I think will be really interesting, is post-quantum encryption. So after the boom, once quantum has actually occurred, we now have quantum compute. And once attackers have figured out how to break the current encryption, then what happens and why we should prepare ahead of that.
Yes.
And it is really a fascinating area. So stay tuned, folks. Come in and listen to Chaitanya with us next week.
Yeah, I predict at some point in the future we'll be talking about post-quantum cryptographic AI agents.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Yeah. So, and probably sooner, we're talking about it sooner rather than later anyway. So, thanks everybody for tuning in. Please tune in again next week for the next episode of Cyber Sidekicks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.